Call the meeting of the Design Adjustment Committee to order. Before we get started, I have to read an introduction. The Design Adjustment Committee's purpose is to establish clear and measurable review criteria for the consideration of major deviations from the city's Technical Standards and Specifications Manual, building design and material standards, and subdivision standards. The committee does not consider housing type, cost of the proposed unit, occupants, building material, unit size, number of bedrooms, or the architectural design of the structures. These hearings are quasi-judicial evidentiary hearings. That means they are like court hearing, and the committee's decisions are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based upon the facts presented. All variance requests require a 4/5 vote of the committee to grant the variance. Appeals of committee decisions are to Superior Court. The parties in these cases are entitled to an impartial board. If a board member has a fixed opinion on the matter, a financial interest in the outcome, a close relationship with the affected person, or has had any ex parte communication about the matter, please disclose that information to determine if a recusal is necessary. City staff will introduce the proposed project to the committee, and committee members may ask questions. The applicant may present additional information about the project, and members may ask questions. If anyone wishes to provide evidence at today's hearing, witnesses must sign in on the clipboard in the back of the room and be sworn in. Because witnesses are to provide sworn testimony, please focus on the facts and the standards, not personal preference or opinion. When a witness comes forward to give testimony, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and speak clearly. At this time, staff will administer the oath for all individuals who intend to provide witness testimony.
If I could please have all staff, applicants, members of the public, anyone who wishes to speak this afternoon must stand up and be sworn in. Please stand up and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the April 16th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, is there any comments or questions? Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I will. Okay. He'll second that motion. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. First item on the agenda is 5651 Greenville Loop Road or Vista Verde.
All right. This is a site located at 5651 Greenville Loop Road. The site includes 5 acres and is located within R15 moderate density single dwelling district. The project will require the approval of a special use permit, which is currently scheduled to go before the City Council on June 17th, 2025. At the February 19th, 2025 DAC, the board approved a waiver to the length of a cul-de-sac, as well as conditional approval of a temporary turnaround at the end of the cul-de-sac to be built per city standards. That move. The Technical Standards and Specifications Manual specifies a minimum standards for non-arterial streets in residential areas and subdivisions. The applicant proposes the construction of a new right-of-way as part of their proposed development. The applicant proposes to reduce the width of the right-of-way to 44 feet from the required 50 feet, as well as proposing to reduce the width of the pavement required from 24 feet to 18 feet. This street cross-section is limited to a maximum of 15 dwelling units. Excuse me. The applicant has provided justification for the request on attachment 3 of your package. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'd like to have my case summary be entered into the record, and the applicant and representatives are here as well for any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Todd, do you know, is this 50-foot right-of-way, just I guess for clarification, I believe that is noted as a residential collector street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Is the applicant here? Do they wish to speak?
Good afternoon. Just give me a moment to, oh, there we go. Let me pull this up for you guys. Okay. All right, so good afternoon. I'm Chauncey Archer. I'm the applicant for the Vista Verde project. Todd covered some of the highlights before. We had a DAC hearing back in February, and this committee gave us some feedback about some of the waivers we had requested, which we have been able to revise our plan to eliminate most of them. We are still requesting one. Todd did cover this, but this is our site location on Greenville Loop Road, kind of zoomed out. Our site's located between Quiet Lane and Woodland Trace Drive, directly across from Hunter's Mill Lane on Greenville Loop Road on the northern side. Here's a blown up picture of that, just to see it a little more clearly. It consists of exactly 5 acres. What we are proposing is a single-family courtyard style development. It's my understanding that the city of Wilmington does not have one of these yet. And so we are proposing the first community of this kind with 25 intelligently designed single-family homes. They all face each other around common green spaces, and they're interconnected with walking paths, trails, and in our particular case, we have 3 clusters that are individually grouped. Our site, our actual construction, our proposed dwellings are 220 feet back from the road, so as to try to keep this sort of nestled in nature. Just hitting on what a courtyard community is, they consist of smaller homes. They're a maximum of 1,000 heated square feet. There's several requirements about front porches, promoting kind of interconnectivity, community involvement. Each cluster can have only between a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 12 homes grouped together around a common green space. The fronts of the homes face a semi-private central courtyard. Vehicles are really clustered together or away from view in this pattern. And so in this case, our detached garages are separate from the actual homes themselves. And the community is designed to promote neighborly interaction, outdoor enjoyment. It fosters a sense of tight-knit community and provides a sense of safety for the residents. When we researched this pattern, we did find that many of the components of this pattern were very consistent with the City of Wilmington's vision and kind of master plan, some of the highlights on things they wanted to promote, promoting pedestrian activity, interactivity, smaller footprint, et cetera. This is our engineered plan, which has been modified since we originally presented it in February. It's small, so if I need to zoom in to illustrate anything in greater detail, please let me know. But the bottom of this plan is Greenville Loop Road. We have an entry that veers westward, straightens out, and then we have some drive aisles that come off of that, allowing access in sort of a loop pattern to the various home sites and ultimately parking in garages. What we are requesting is a right-of-way technical standard waiver. The current standard, which is called local residential, requires a 50-foot wide right-of-way to service, more than 15 properties, which that's comprised of 24 feet of pavement, 2 feet of curb on either side, 6 feet of plaza on either side, 5 feet of sidewalk on either side. What we're proposing is a proposed new standard that's currently linked on the City of Wilmington website for a 44-foot wide right-of-way which would serve up to 150 properties in that standard, and this is referred to as a residential standard. That's comprised of 18 feet of pavement, 2 feet of curb, 6 feet of plaza, 5 feet of sidewalk. When we initially were proposing this, we had initially requested to remove the plaza and sidewalk on the western side, just to make the right-of-way a little more lean. We didn't have much interactivity on the west as it was, to where we were relying on foot traffic and whatnot for the sidewalk on the eastern side of the project. But there was concerns about, I think from the committee, about future connectivity and how that would sort of play out. So we did revise this to reintroduce that. I think it seemed like it would be more palatable if we did that, so we took that suggestion and implemented that into our new plan. Just to give you a side-by-side of the current standard, here's a table which I may need to zoom in on for others to see. If you give me a moment, I can do that. So a local residential street, here's just a breakdown of the right-of-way, which can serve, I guess, up to 50 units. So more than 15, up to 50, with a 50-foot right-of-way, and they have the different dimensions for all those components, and they have different options, which total up to 50. Over on the right, we have a table where we've highlighted the residential standard, which just provides a breakdown. And then we have just a dimension graphic depicting both of those standards. The original currently adopted standard on the left, and then the proposed standard on the right. So the benefits that we are envisioning for this waiver to produce are reduce environmental impact, more preservation of natural areas, lower impervious surface, some material and energy savings, some enhanced public safety. Smaller roads just tend to slow people down. We think that's important in a community as sort of interconnected as this, which would ultimately lead to improved pedestrian safety. And some community benefits are aesthetic and community character, and obviously cost savings for the residents in whatever capacity that would reveal itself. So that's our proposal, and we appreciate you guys hearing our request.
Any questions? I mean, I guess I should start by correcting myself. This isn't designated currently as a residential collector. It looks like from the 50-foot right-of-way as a local, what'd you call it, local residential standard, so, okay. Any questions?
I won't tell on you.
No.
Yeah, I've got one question. I know it looks like it's being designed as a stub street, future connectivity. What concerns are there, or what information is available regarding the acreage or the zoning codes behind what this could future connect to?
Yeah, there's 25 acres behind us. We don't own that at that time. We have an agreement with the owner to have the option to purchase those lands should it make sense to do so. It's currently zoned the same as R15. I think it's 24.25 acres, not quite 25.
You could scroll up just a hair so we can see these different cross sections.
Sure.
Right here.
Would you like me to zoom in?
No, that's fine. Thank you. That's all of my questions for now, but.
Sure.
One of the things that wasn't mentioned was the non-municipal easement that is
Yes.
required. You don't specify it in your waiver request. Are you able to provide that non-municipal easement on both sides?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We have it, we actually have that in this drawing.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I saw what looked like it, but I couldn't find it in our packet, but it looks
Okay.
like it's on your sketch.
It is, yeah. That had come up in our previous meeting. Planning had asked if we could provide it, and I think we gave them a trip engineering put together sort of like a rough sketch for us that they wanted to clean up, and this is a cleaned up version of that, but I believe they did have one that had it, and maybe it wasn't as clear, but we do have the 10-foot non-municipal easement on both sides of the street.
Okay, and then that easement on the west side looks like it extends onto the adjoining property, and you think that'll be okay?
Yeah, we do have a written agreement with Mr. Woody about being able to do that.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't own the land yet. This process is really contingent on how, we need to see how things go. But we do have that in writing that he would be agreeable to it regardless.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, if for some reason, I guess the way this is structured, if for some reason you weren't able to get that at the time of plat, it kind of
Right.
forces us back here and talking about a
Sure.
waiver for that. But if you've addressed that ahead of time, I'm certainly satisfied with that. One of the things that I was noticing in review of this packet, I don't know if it's been discussed previously, but the driveway, the northernmost driveway, looks like it's right on the property line. Is there any property line offset that proposed for that location?
Up in this north
Yeah,
western
it
corner?
looks like it's just right on the property line.
Yeah, I think we have like 3 feet. It's not much.
Okay, I mean, if the waiver isn't requested, there may be a slight adjustment to meet the property line offset. It looks like you've got some distance between, I mean, that's not right of way, that's a driveway, right? So
Right.
it's not like it would require a waiver, but there may be an adjustment necessary to meet that property line offset.
Yeah, and part of what drove our request here was during our community meeting, some of the residents who obviously lived on the eastern side of us had expressed some concern about how close we were to their properties. And so ultimately we say, well, what can we do to reduce our total impact and footprint? I realize this is just 6 feet that we're requesting, but I think every foot that we can get to make our footprint smaller to accomplish what we're trying to do is, I feel like would be better received than otherwise.
So wait, you're requesting that waiver? Because I
No.
think what I'm saying is
Oh, no. What I'm saying is we're just trying to reduce the size of what we're building because
okay.
people had expressed, well, is there any way you could not be so close or not be so big or, and so we were trying to address that concern.
And your presentation indicated that this type product is maximum of 1,000 heated square feet. You're showing 1,400. Is that like footprint versus heated?
Yeah, so this has been something that has been asked of us a couple times. The boxes represent kind of our total impervious potential for that property. So the actual dwellings can only be 1,000 heated square feet, but they will have some porches. They will have maybe a little garden with a picket fence in front of them, a little walkway connecting them to the central courtyard. So the idea is we wanted to show kind of an envelope that was larger to say worst case scenario, this home will occupy room in this box somewhere. Likely it may only occupy 70% of what we see there, but the idea is let's design this larger, knowing we'll have to scale down, then potentially we can get a little more tree save or something else that just, I think would be better received, kind of work from a worst case scenario inward, but it's a impervious count, not a square footage count.
Understood. And the last, sorry to hog up all the time, I'll give everyone else opportunity, but my last question that I had deals with the future build-out. Mm-hmm. And I think, Dennis sort of alluded to that, is how many units are you proposing currently? We're
at 25. Right
25.
now.
So that's within the realm of this product, road, local residential right now. But presumably, if it's stubbed out, this road will serve those future development in the future. And I kind of feel like if we're narrowing that section down through this area, you're kind of setting up for a future variance If this serves, 25, additional units further to the north. That would be my sort of biggest concern is, yes, it meets sort of that threshold now, but it kind of sets us up for a waiver in the future. So I would, just ask that, when you're considering that,
we, to a certain degree, I don't own all 25 acres behind me yet, so we have to plan for what we have because to a certain extent, and we may do this 25 and realize that's all it needs to be. That may be it. We may acquire some land from Mr. Woody to just account for certain additional amenities we want. We don't know. We don't know what the future will hold, but it's a fair point. I suppose there are other potential uses that could happen should a waiver not be granted in the future for, more homes. We could go with larger lots and do something bigger, should we even get to that point. But we're just not trying to put the cart before the horse.
Just wanted to mention it.
Sure.
I just wanted to back up to the first item Rob brought up. I think, are you referring to the one-way being so close to the property lines?
I am.
The D-shaped, it's not part of the variance being requested here, but I guess the concerns were that the one-way roadway is up against the property line. You're saying there's 6 feet between the one-way roadway and the property line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wanted to make sure I heard
Yeah, I mean, that'll be something that's reviewed at the TRC level,
Right.
but I guess just as long as you understand that there was no variance requested for that
Right.
property line offset, so it's,
Right.
the standard's gonna have to be met.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yep.
and we're prepared to, I think, meet that challenge because when you look at these boxes again, we've sort of over-designed the sizing requirements that we need for them on purpose, just because at the end of the day, we have to make sure everything will fit in the box, so to speak. And if our boxes are larger than we need, we know we can always size them down. Which, I mean, the pattern would welcome that anyway, because it's not designed to be huge homes. They're designed to be small on purpose.
Understood. Any other questions? Again, I can't promise I won't bring you back up, but I appreciate it.
Sure, of course. Do you need me to leave this up, or?
If you could leave it on the one that shows the standards,
Okay, sure.
'cause I feel like that's where we're gonna center around. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, which brings us to discussion about the one waiver that they have requested, which was for the non-standard, cross-section. Again, the two biggest deviations being, or the two, being the width of the right-of-way and the width of the asphalt. Any discussion on those two items? I mean, what about the width of the pavement? Is there any concerns from a traffic standpoint? I saw some traffic calming, I guess, component of the request. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my sticking points. I can appreciate the narrower streets, but I know we have lots of streets around town that are 18 feet wide, and we get frequent complaints on those about the width. There is value in narrow streets, and they are providing sidewalks and plazas, so we're separating uses, which makes sense. My concern with the right-of-way that's being, or the asphalt width, not necessarily the right-of-way, but the asphalt width being proposed is that this development is adjacent to the major thoroughfare of Greenville Loop Road, so that any future development that utilizes this right-of-way, it may exceed that need, and I don't want to get us into that position. I would rather meet the standards now so we're not trying to say sorry or adjust it later.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a similar concern. It's 18 feet is very narrow, and it's gonna, you're gonna exceed that pretty quickly with any more units, and I don't know, it's tough to justify on a brand-new site. You know, I understand the site constraint and the product, I can appreciate that. I can understand the benefits of a narrower section. But I'm not sure I'm quite there yet on the pavement width.
And I'd also add that, you know, based on the site design, I mean, this road it's going to look like a collector street. There aren't private driveways off, there's 2 driveways off of it. You know, it's not like every single property has a driveway and it's going to look and feel like a neighborhood. Folks from the neighborhood are going to be accessing that road to get to Greenville Loop Road. So it's going to be, I'm not going to call it a thoroughfare by any stretch, but there's not going to be a lot of activity other than vehicular activity and side, you know, people aren't going to be checking their mailbox on that road. They're not going to be doing that kind of stuff. So it's going to probably look and feel as a through street. And the most close description of that would be that collector type street. Now, I know 4 feet's going to be 4 feet. You know, would there be an option to retain that right of way and just lose plaza width? I mean, that's going to create another variance, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's see, they're proposing, trying to figure out where we're losing, because they're proposing 6-foot plaza, 5-foot sidewalk. It's just.
It's all out of the asphalt, yeah.
Okay. So they're proposing that residential standard. So it is consistent with the new proposed tech standards for the number of units that are proposed. And I guess it is worth mentioning that the new tech standards wouldn't bump up to the collector status until you hit 150 units. It's just, you know, in the current, but we can't judge it by the proposed standard. That hasn't been adopted yet. It's more of the deviation from the current standard.
So deviating from the current standard, you know, they're required 26 feet of asphalt, you know.
26 or 24?
Based on the box that's shown in red there on the left, it looks like there's 26 feet of asphalt.
Okay. Yeah, I think that says 24 in our packet, but either way, they need a waiver from it.
Well, is it a type H curb or a type D curb?
I always think of it as, is there anyone from engineering who can clarify whether the valley curb is considered type H curb? Anyone here who can do that? Either way, I think in our packet, it shows that the required pavement width is 24 feet. So that's what I'm going to review this on. That was what was entered into the record. So I'm going to assume the required width is 24 and they're requesting a waiver to 18. They also show in their section on the plans, it wasn't a component of the you know, the review is the type of curb. They're showing valley curb, which is interesting considering the fact that there's not a lot of driveways. Typically see valley curb when you have a lot of driveways. It makes the driveway construction a little easier. But the vertical curb does help prevent people from throwing 2 wheels up on the, you know, it helps protect the pedestrians better, and it helps, you know, minimize, you know, the parking issues that can tend to occur on a narrow right-of-way. So if I'm going to support it, I'm going to add that condition, that the vertical curb be added as opposed to the valley curb that's shown. But, yeah, that shows all, that's just the curb detail. They, on their section detail on page C1, top right C1. They're showing valley curb there. And I do believe that can lead to misuse, you know, some if they have some parking concerns, it leads to And again, it doesn't protect the pedestrians better, as well, because it doesn't have that vertical separation. It really just boils down to whether we're okay with an 18-foot, pavement width, or whether we need more than that. Any thoughts from fire? You guys, what's your standard?
Standard for one-way is 18 feet.
What about two-way? I mean,
Two-way is a minimum of 24.
for a street, is two-way a minimum of 24?
Yeah, that you have 12 foot each lane considered from curb to curb.
Okay,
Curb to curb, yeah.
from face of curb to face of curb?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would include the gutter pan,
Right.
not just the asphalt?
just the
So if
asphalt
there's
itself.
18 inches on each side, okay. That's 21 feet of asphalt.
Chairman Gordon, could you restate what Mr. Coleman and you were talking about? I'm not sure that Mr. Coleman's microphone was on clearly enough for us to hear talking about the requirement for fire. If you could just restate that for the record.
The standard for one-way road from fire is minimum 18 feet. Two-way road is minimum of 24 feet from curb to curb.
So from curb to curb with a vertical curb with an 18-inch gutter pan, that's 24 minus 3 for the gutter pans, 21. I mean, I feel like that is about as low as we should be going with this standard, considering I just don't feel like it's right for this board to, approve something that's less than fire code would allow.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I do, I agree. The narrow roads may slow down pedestrian traffic, but it really slows down fire traffic. In other words, it takes us longer to get there than normal. And if you have a car that's hanging out of the driveway into the road, then now you've narrowed it down to where it's impassable.
Well, I'll give them credit for that. I don't feel like that's going to be an issue on this case
Right,
because
it
of
may
the way
not.
that they've got the units situated and the parking on the private drive. So they don't have any driveways off of the main drive or the public right-of-way. So that's good. Any discussion? Any more discussion on that? I'm going to go ahead and make the motion make the motion that we conditionally approve the waiver for a reduction from 24 feet to 21 feet to be consistent with fire code. And I will add the condition that they use vertical curb as opposed to the valley curb shown on their site plans. And again, the reasoning is consistency with fire code requirements. And I think that's really all that's necessary at this point.
Second the motion.
Any other discussion on that motion?
I guess my only question would be if we're going to conditionally approve that for 21 feet, would there be any value in conditionally approving it for 22 feet so it meets our future standards of a collector street?
Well, I think the concern there is that they don't have 150 units. The proposed standard is a residential collector standard kicks in at the 150 units. And while there is a future, I think it is reasonable to assume a future use of this parcel. I don't know that they'll hit 150 units. They could, and obviously that would be a problem. But I think my motion was for the 21 foot.
And would that be it looked like there were kind of two parts to this waiver, the asphalt width and the right-of-way width, an A and B. Does that affect the right-of-way width at all?
It's a great question. because I think that the 6-foot plaza is about as narrow as it could go. So if you're going to expand the asphalt by 3 feet, the right-of-way needs to be expanded by 3 feet as well, because I really, with all the utilities and non-municipal utilities and everything else these days, that there's a lot of competition for space in that plaza area. Would the CFPUA agree with that, or I assume, or?
Yeah, Mike, you gotta hit. Yeah.
Yeah, we find the water line in the plaza is acceptable, but, didn't want to share that with other, the utilities.
Okay, so I'm going to need some assistance here. I'm willing to adjust my motion. What is the process for that?
I think there needs to be an amendment to the motion that you made.
He can make that?
That was Dennis that proposed that?
Yes. Yeah, I would accept that amendment to, to add a third condition that the right-of-way be, 47 feet to accommodate for the additional pavement width. Does that have to be re-seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and I'll second that motion.
Okay, so just to summarize, we are conditionally approving it with a 47-foot right-of-way, a 21-foot pavement, and vertical curb, as opposed to the valley curb that was shown on the site plan. And we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval of the conditional approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Second item on the agenda is the North 17th Street Shopping Center. Is there a staff presentation?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I believe there's a preliminary plan that needs to be approved as part of the previous item. Since they're dedicating a new right-of-way, there is a subdivision, so the preliminary plan will be required to be approved.
So if we have made required adjustments to the proposed right-of-way, can we approve the preliminary plan with those adjustments added?
Yes, you would approve the preliminary plan subject to the conditional approval of the waivers you just approved.
I will make a motion to approve the preliminary plan for the project, subject to the conditional adjustments that were proposed.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Sorry about that, Brian. Is there a staff presentation on item number 2?
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is a request for open space at 4302 and 4308 Market Street near the intersection of Carr Avenue. The site includes 1.59 acres and is located within the RB Regional Business Zoning District. The site currently contains a multi-tenant shopping center and associated parking lot. The applicant is currently in review with the TRC for the redevelopment of the lot for a 5-story building, 4 floors of which would be residential, and the ground floor would be retained as commercial property. The applicant has requested an allowance for a payment in lieu for required open space. Section 18-507 of the Land Development Code stipulates that the Design Adjustment Committee may allow payment to the city in lieu of dedication of open space set aside, or combination of dedication and payment. Section 18-664 of the Land Development Code specifically itemizes improvements that may not be counted towards allowed open space. And those items can be found in your case summary packet as well. The required open space for the proposed project is 13,922 square feet. The applicant is proposing 2,168 square feet of open space. The tax value of the entire tract is $321,800 per the New Hanover County tax records. Based on the tax value of the property, the price per square foot is $4.65. The payment estimated would be $54,656.10 for the 11,754 square feet of required open space based on the requirements of the Land Development Code. The applicant is proposing a payment of $6,240.91, and that was an amendment from their original request they made on March 5th, which was for $34,000. They amended that on April 1st of this year to $6,240, like I mentioned. The applicant has provided justification for the request on attachment 3 of your package. And this concludes staff's presentation, and I'd like to have my summary entered into the record, please.
Thank you. Any questions for Todd? Not at this time, but I'm sure there will be at a later date.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a presentation from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Chairman Gordon, members of the board. My name is Sam Frank. I represent the applicant. With me today are Annamaria Lookman and Chauncey Lookman, both with the applicant, also our architect and land planner, Ken Thompson. What's this all about? So we have a site that is currently entirely covered with pavement, asphalt, and rooftops. There's almost no pervious surface on it at all. Plan is to redevelopment that site. Redevelopment of the site will result in installation of significant green surface, pervious surface. The code, as it's written and interpreted, requires 20% defined open space for this site, as it would as if the site were not a redevelopment site but a new subdivision. And we're asking for relief from that. In plain terms, we're asking you not to charge us so much money to add green where there is currently concrete. The site plan is evolving, and so what Mr. Rademacher showed you in the staff report was current as of the time of the application. It's evolved since then. I'll show you the current evolution of the site plan on the screen in just a moment here. I'm glad to talk about a variance to reduce the payment in lieu to a specific amount related to a specific amount of open space provided, but also open-minded, if you think more appropriate, to seek relief from the concept that landscaping be counted against the open space requirement or towards the open space requirement, recognizing that this design may continue to evolve and be more refined before it is finally approved. Again, either of those alternatives, and of course the alternative where you choose to waive the requirement altogether or the payment in lieu altogether is also an acceptable solution to us. As mentioned, this site's located at 4302 through 4338 Market Street. As it exists today, it's a commercial building, supports several commercial enterprises, including the Wilmington staple Elizabeth's Pizza, which has been there for decades. Unfortunately, the site sustained significant hurricane damage that has led to a current physical condition that renders some of the building inoperable and untenable, and a physical, realistic need for the building to be replaced. As you might imagine, in connection with replacement of the building, there's an opportunity to do something much better, and therefore it is our client's wish to do something much better on the site than what is currently there. Intent is to modernize and redevelop the site to provide a commercial district mixed-use project that will maintain the significant commercial amenity space and also incorporate a mixed-use residential component. Currently anticipate approximately 53 residential units above the commercial services. It would include the redevelopment of the site outside of the building as well. Result would be to incorporate some 12,300 to 400 square feet of green space. Some of that green space technically qualifies as open space. Some of that green space is landscaping that would not meet the city's technical requirement for open space. Sorry, I don't mean to gloss over those images. And forgive me, I forgot to ask if our presentation here could be entered into the record. I would be grateful. The images on the screen give you an idea of what I just verbally described, the current condition of the site, very much a commercial site, very consistent with others in this stretch of Market Street. There's not a lot of green on any of them, including this one. You can see that the asphalt and the buildings essentially reach to the property boundaries. The image on the left side of the screen shows you the very small piece of pervious surface that exists on the site today, which is just approximately 50 square feet. Here's what the design looks like now. You can see the building's been moved towards the front, which is more consistent with the policy objectives described in the city's comp plan. Also more consistent with the technical requirements in the code for the size and shape of building that we would like to be included here, and also just a better design, better visibility for Market Street, safer situation with parking behind the building. What's shown in bright green at the bottom of the site is what is technically identified as pure open space under the city's code. So if you, and I'll get into the code provisions in just a second, but if this were a new development site and we were talking about preserving natural vegetated condition in a certain area for the sake of satisfying an open space requirement, that's shown in bright green will be new, but it would satisfy those requirements. What's shown in slightly darker green is all of the new green that is not technically open space. And what's shown in turquoise blue is the pedestrian areas proposed on the site. Right. Again, the code contemplates open space as land that remains undeveloped, land that's left undisturbed in its natural and vegetated condition. On a redevelopment site, there is no such land. We don't have any land that we can leave quote unquote undeveloped or maintain in its undisturbed and natural vegetated condition. In discussion with staff, we understand and respect that the city's position is on a redevelopment project, in general, the open space set-asides will apply, notwithstanding this language in the code. Instead of challenging that conclusion, we are following a different path available through the code and asking you for relief in terms of a reduced or eliminated payment in lieu for provision of open space less than the full amount required by the code for a new development. So that provision provides that when conditions exist such that providing the entire amount of required open space set aside is not reasonable and the recreational needs of the development can adequately be met, you are authorized to allow for a payment in lieu or a reduced payment in lieu accordingly. As you can see by the satellite image of the site, not only is it entirely covered with impervious surface, it's also tight. There's just not a whole lot of room here. The building on the site immediately adjacent to us at the south is right there on the property line. The improvements on either side are right up to the property lines. There's not a lot of land area here. So despite the fantastic fit of mixed-use development in this section of the city of Wilmington, there's not much room to support it. And therefore, very proud of what we've done to create as much green as we could and recognize that there's really not a significant opportunity to expand that much further. To that end, I'd like to invite Ken Thompson, the architect and land planner, to speak with you just for a minute about the evolution of the design, sort of some of the factors that drove us to the design that's been proposed.
Good afternoon. Ken Thompson with J. Davis Architects up in Raleigh. I am the land planner and director of development planning for the firm. I'm here to discuss some of the items that drove our decisions in the site plan layout. We're redeveloping the plan under Article 5, Division 10, Infill and Redevelopment, which is sections 18462 to 18464. That requires that the building be set back no farther than 30 feet from the public right-of-way on Market Street. As you can see from the aerial that was up previously, there was parking between the building and Market Street. We have no direct access to Market Street or Carr. All of our access is through cross-access agreements for both pedestrians and vehicles to the property owners east and west of the site. So we need to maintain those with our new plan as well. This is, that's not the one I thought it was. Let's see. Thought we were going to look along the aerial.
You're looking for the satellite?
Yeah. As we mentioned before, the existing building backs up to a service area and another existing building that fronts Carr Street. You can see that on the lower edge of this page. And then we had, these are the photographs of those areas. The one in yellow is the building that's going to remain. The one in red, that's the one we're going to tear down and replace. Apologies. So you can see, compared to what was there, we are proposing a lot of green to meet code required landscaping and as much open space as we can. And we are going to provide amenities within the property. We're proposing a fifth floor amenity area for the residents. All the blue that you saw on the site plan, that would be for use for the residents to be able to walk their dogs. Ground floor would be able to have tables outside if you had a little coffee shop or something like that. And then you can see on this slide, we have several parks nearby that would provide additional open space for the residents. We have Mays Park, Beaumont Park, and McCrary Park. And next door, we also have Captain Bill's sand volleyball courts.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
And so the criteria that we demonstrate that significant recreational opportunity is available on the site and nearby is a component of the code and is indicative of, I believe, the philosophy behind that open space requirement. And so that's why we're describing to you the recreational uses, not only on the site itself, on the top of the building and around the building, but also in the nearby locations. So given the unique property and the proposed redevelopment project, the improvement that proposed redevelopment project will be for the community over what exists today, we ask that this committee use its discretion in interpreting the required payment in lieu for the open space set aside. Even though this is not a subdivision, we recognize that and it won't be, don't intend to subdivide the land. We recognize that the interpretation by the city is that the requirements apply all the same. Those requirements do afford you flexibility based on the criteria we've discussed and other relevant information. The underlying objectives of this section may be achieved even though the standards are not adhered to precisely. So again, As best we understand it, the objective of that open space requirement is to create to preserve green space where green space exists and to provide opportunities for recreation. In this case, there is no green space to preserve. We're going to create new green space, and we are significantly providing opportunities for outdoor recreation in connection with the design of the redeveloped site. So I mentioned earlier that we're glad to characterize this request in terms of a specific number and glad to talk with you about that, which is what I was getting ready to get into on this next slide. But I also recognize as we go through this that in the future steps through the TRC and the like, those numbers might adjust. And so I'm looking for some guidance from you. If you're more comfortable with us seeking a specific number, we will. But if you're more comfortable with us proposing a concept, either that the requirement would be set aside so long as we deliver at least a certain amount of landscaping and open space, or if the requirement would take into account all of the landscaping, the new landscaping provided, regardless of whether it's technically open space, open-minded to that as well. By the numbers, for the sake of context or for the sake of specificity, whichever way we go, today you got about 50 feet of grass on the site that does not qualify as open space under the city's code. As designed, we've got about 2,100 and change of proposed open space and over 10,000 feet of proposed landscaping. We've also got close to 7,000 feet of proposed pedestrian recreational use space on the site. Factors for you to consider are very familiar to you. I won't rehash them specifically here, but I would like to speak just briefly to how those factors are satisfied in this condition. Clearly, the intent of the chapter is to encourage preservation of open space and creation of outdoor recreation areas. Again, there's nothing to preserve in this case, and we are creating significant recreational opportunities. The comprehensive plan and other policy documents support overwhelmingly the concept of redevelopment, infill development, and mixed-use development in this location. The request does not increase congestion or compromise safety. Again, what we're doing here is adding green where there is less. We're taking parking away from being adjacent to the road in each and every way. The redevelopment is a safer and a better arrangement than we have now. We're not creating or eliminating any sort of direct street frontage than that exists today. I included a slide on the comprehensive plan policies. I suspect that these are very familiar to you, and so I will also talk about those just briefly. Creating a place for everyone is about not just a diversity of housing options, but creating a diversity of housing options in places where they are well served by existing infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, as well as water, sewer, and electric utilities. And also creating space and diversity of housing options in locations that are immediately adjacent to or close to existing commercial services. Changing places and revitalizing spaces. Again, this is a section of town that historically has been a really meaningful component of our economy and our community. It's also one of the oldest areas of established commercial development in Wilmington. This is a fantastic example of an opportunity to start redevelopment of that section of Market Street in a positive way. Unique places and captivating spaces. The comp plan plainly supports taking something that is just today an asphalt parking lot with a commercial box on top of it and turning it into something that's more interactive. Mixed-use centers, we're smack dab in the middle of one. That probably speaks for itself. Opportunity zone, high-density transitions, again, is exactly what's being proposed to develop here. I realize that the specific request relates solely to how we treat the open space requirement on this site. Nonetheless, the nature of the planned development is important and significant to that ultimate decision, and that's why I've spent a little time talking about it. All right. This request does not in any way increase congestion or compromise safety. It's absolutely consistent with the comprehensive plan. It will allow you a mechanism to encourage this type of development, which is encouraged by the comprehensive plan, in a way that does not change your policies or practices with regard to the manner in which you've treated open space and redevelopment on other sites. For all of these reasons, we respectfully request that the Design Adjustment Committee either afford us relief from the open space requirement altogether, or in the alternative, allow for consideration and accounting for the new landscaped areas to contribute towards the open space requirement and a payment in lieu calculated accordingly. Both myself, our architect, and the representatives of the developer are here and very interested to answer any questions if you should have them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Sam, just to get my brain straight, your reduction in square footage that you've whittled it down to, what is that compromise? How did you get to that number? I thought I saw 6,000.
Yeah, and so it's an increase. Today there's 50 feet of pervious surface. As a result of the redevelopment, there will be 12,494 feet of impervious. Today, there's very limited pedestrian area. As a result of the redevelopment, there will be 6,987 feet of pedestrian area. A strict interpretation of the code, if this was a vacant piece of forested land that was to be subdivided and redeveloped, we would be compelled to establish 13,922 feet of open space. The difference between the open space that we will provide and the landscaping that we will provide and what is required if this were a untouched, naturally vegetated site is approximately 1,600 feet. The precise number is what we use to calculate the payment in lieu of approximately $6,400. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
I just wanted to, so everything that's shown on green or blue on here is what you're saying this is, if this were a vacant site, if this were a forested site, this is the percentage that would be there, should we be starting from scratch?
Well, we haven't shown that. If it was an all-green site on day one and we redeveloped it and put 20% that was preserved as open space on it, I don't know where it would go.
Okay.
But what I'm showing you on the screen, what's in bright green counts as open space, what's in darker green is landscaping, and what's in bright blue is pedestrian areas, so that they are not pervious, but they are of value in the context of the city's interpretation of open space requirement.
And through the site, I know there are some sidewalks and some areas on the existing site.
There is some limited, give me a chance and I'll get back to the satellite so we can look at that specifically. Sorry, I have to look at highlighted code again for me to get there. One more. There we go. Yeah, so I think you've got a sidewalk of sorts in front of the businesses. And I think that's the sole pedestrian ingress, egress, or even potentially arguable outdoor recreational opportunity on the site as it exists today.
Was that discounted from the blue area you had shown, or?
The blue's the new pedestrian outdoor recreational activity, and that includes outdoor seating. We actually got some incorporated into the design for the rooftop of the building as well that doesn't qualify, and so we didn't show it on the plan. But yeah, it's not just about ingress, egress from the parking areas to the site, but also active, interaction with the commercial enterprises that'll be in the building.
Can you flip to the next screen? I think it's got
Yes, sir.
the different colors on there. There we go.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. So the sidewalk along Market Street's going to remain. And this blue that you've got shown looks like, I don't know what the dimension is, but it's parallel with Market Street. Is that, or maybe yeah. Is that new pedestrian area? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. That would be a combination of outdoor seating areas for the restaurant-type businesses and also a wider, more inviting opportunity for ingress and egress for pedestrians to the other businesses that would be on the first floor of the building.
And so can you walk me through the calculation of how you got to 62, 40, 91? It sounds like you're wanting to add back in the required landscaping, but you're not challenging the $4.65, I guess, value per square foot, right?
Correct. We and staff agree that the value of the site, based on the applicable tax records, is $321,800. We agree that the area of the site is 69,610 feet, and therefore the incremental value for each of those open space square feet is $4 and either 65 cents or 62 cents. It's hard for me not to advocate and at least ask that you consider eliminating the payment in lieu requirement altogether in light of this being a redevelopment site. But if you are unwilling to eliminate it altogether, then you're correct. The calculation is the difference between open space plus landscaping relative to what 20% open space would have been.
So you're adding back in the landscape islands. Are the pedestrian areas that you're shown in blue, are they added back in as well? No. Okay, so it's just what's shown in the various shades of green.
Correct. If you gave us credit for the pedestrian areas qualifying as open space, there would be no payment in lieu. We would be over the 20%.
Okay. Any other questions for Sam? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to, out of curiosity, the activity area that's on the top floor you mentioned.
Yeah.
Is that interior? Is that open space? Is it open air?
Be all right with you if I invited our designer to
that'd be
talk to you
great.
about that? Not only because he knows better, but he can describe it much better than I can.
Yeah, so I'm not the project architect, but I'll do my best. Currently up on the 5th floor is a combination of resident indoor and outdoor amenity area. So, there'd be like indoor kitchen and there'd be outdoor space for them to go up to on the rooftop and be able to look out over the area.
Okay. So,
And we're still in the SD phase on the building, so the square footages could move. The location on the rooftop could move, things like that, based when we start getting into the structure of the building.
and those facilities would be restricted to the residents of
That's correct,
the
yes.
units? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. That's all I had at this time.
We'll be nearby should you need us. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Which brings us to the discussion about this. As I understand it, and I'm going to need a lot of assistance from staff on this, it's kind of a two-part discussion. And one is the payment in lieu warranted? And then second is how much? Is that correct?
That is correct. The previous cases where this committee has granted a payment in lieu for open space, the initial determination is whether to allow for the payment in lieu. I don't recall a time when this committee actually reduced the amount. I think there is some leeway for discussion of how you arrive at tax value and square footage value. But I do not think that this committee has before reduced the amount that was required for the payment in lieu.
Understood. Okay. Travis, you have any thoughts on this?
Just to follow up with staff real quick, so the numbers on the screen are the active. I know it's been mentioned that the site plan's been revised a little bit and things have shifted around, but is this 13922 and 2168 accurate as of now?
I believe what you see on the screen is correct based on the information that staff received. The site plan that was shown by the applicant, that's the first time I saw that. I'm not sure if that was shared with any other staff member prior to this meeting.
Okay.
And was the, is there any, I guess, leeway in the code for an open space calculation on a redevelopment site? In other words, are they already getting credit, or is a redevelopment site treated the same from an open space standpoint as a green site?
It's treated the same. The commercial district mixed use is allowing a residential component to be introduced in a commercial area, and as such, it's required to meet certain criteria to allow that use to take place. One of those being it needs to add open space similar to what a typical multifamily project would add. So if this was a multifamily development, zone multifamily, they would be required to provide 20% open space just like this project does. The CDMU also has a provision if you have less than half of the site is residential, you don't have an open space requirement. So when the more residential units you add, then you need to provide that open space similar to a multifamily project.
Understood. And I'm just sort of reading through the case summary here. 18664, notes a number of things that shall not be credited towards open space. Is the required landscaping that is identified here, is that on that list, or is that how? Can somebody talk about that at all?
Yeah, the landscaping is one of those things that cannot be counted to meet an open space requirement.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, to follow up on that point, the section, I guess this is section 6 of 507, flexibility in administration authorized requirements set forth in this section concerning the amount, size, location, and nature of open space set-aside areas. That would be, in staff's view, the opportunity for us to incorporate some of those areas, or is that our discretion, or?
The open space standards and what is defined as what can and cannot be allowed to be counted is a code requirement. I don't think this committee has the ability to grant a variance from the code.
That would be Board of Adjustment.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's where I was going with my initial question anyway. Okay, well, I mean, we have to discuss and take some action on this. I mean, I guess I'll start with you, Travis, if you have any thoughts on this.
Well, first of all, I would say that the site plan proposed today, as opposed to what was provided in the packet, does, I agree that it meets the recommendations of the comprehensive plan better than the first one. So
the numbers were roughly the same, though, weren't they? The distribution of
that was my understanding. But I did just want that to be clear, that bringing the building up to Market Street and addressing that is a positive about the new design. Hearing staff's answer to that last question, though, I find us relatively powerless to start incorporating other parts of the site that don't meet the definition of open space as factoring into our decision on a payment in lieu amount.
So we would be still charged with determining whether or not a payment in lieu is appropriate,
Correct.
but we would be more restricted in what we ought to be
Right.
determining that number. Okay. That's kind of how I saw it too in reviewing it. I feel like the redevelopment component that was mentioned throughout both presentations certainly would lend itself towards, you know, a payment in lieu. I personally would acknowledge, yeah, that would make it more difficult to meet the requirement, and it's more subject to the payment in lieu, but the amount, I'm struggling with that, with given the leeway on that.
Yeah, I fully agree. Based on the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, it does envision this area as an urban node. And so this sort of development pattern would be to be expected. And this isn't the only redevelopment that's happening in that area that's encountering the same concerns as well. So I certainly agree that allowing for a fee in lieu is warranted, but.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? I mean, we need to make a motion, and I guess that would be kind of a two-part motion in this case because of the request, because the request is a two-part request, and that is, you know, is the payment in lieu warranted, and if so, did they specifically request?
Mr. Chair, I believe
Yes.
the applicant's representative wanted to address you.
Please, yes.
Would you be kind enough to pull my presentation back up and go, there's a slide that includes the LDC section 18-507D, dog. And I won't go long here, but I do want to, if you'll allow me, offer a counterpoint. I absolutely respect Mr. Chambers' opinion greatly, always have. But I also believe that you have more discretion here than you perhaps may recognize. That provision to the, I don't know where we are. That provision to the code specifically allows you to consider other relevant information as you determine the amount of the payment. And therefore, even if you haven't ever done it before, I believe that you do have the discretion to determine that a different payment in lieu is appropriate here, the one that varies from the initial calculation that was put together. See. And your authority to do that, I believe, is driven by this section, which is subsection D6. And it allows you to consider whether or not the underlying objectives could be achieved, and whether or not deviations from those standards are warranted. So in addition to allowing you authority to consider other relevant information as you calculate the amount, I think you are specifically authorized to consider the facts and circumstances of the case in connection with that decision. It's a legal argument. I'm a lawyer. That's what I do, and so please forgive me for bringing it forward. But I didn't want to sit quiet without having at least mentioned that to you before you make your decision.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion?
What would be considered, it says minor adjustments, what would be considered a minor adjustment? Because I think going from 54,000 to 6,200 is more than minor.
Yeah, I mean, I can respect the, I guess, flexibility that we're supposed to have as a committee, for this, but I'm hesitant to, allow required landscaping that's specifically prohibited from the use, from open space, from being used as open space, as, to count that back in, against the payment in lieu requirement. I'm a little bit concerned about what message that sends for future projects. But certainly respect the redevelopment component and the challenges of, the providing the open space. But I don't know how the rest of the committee feels.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do, again, think the fee in lieu is absolutely warranted, but I don't read 507 as giving us the authority to.
Yeah, my read on that was the other relevant information was associated with the value. So if there'd been like an appraisal or something like that that showed that a value was different, I think that may have been what happened. I can't remember if that happened in the past or not. But I would certainly think that would be warranted, but I don't know. It just.
Agreed, but including things that are explicitly, excluded from the definition of open space to reduce that number. I just don't see that authority within these passages.
Okay. Well, do I have a motion?
I can try to give this a shot. So I'll make a motion to approve the request for a fee in lieu of required open space in association with the site plans provided in this meeting, I guess I would say, with the fee in lieu set at the amount calculated by staff, which is $54,256.10, which I think that.
Yeah, the $4, and I think that the recommendation was to make it at $4.65 to allow flexibility if their design does change, to be adjusted accordingly.
I would gladly accept that modification to the motion.
I will second that motion. Any other discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, staff would ask that you consider the conditions that are included in your staff report to be included in that motion.
I'll amend my motion to include the conditions staff referenced in the report.
Okay, and the $4.65 square foot condition is already in there, so, okay. Yes. Okay, so I will second that motion. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval? Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. So that concludes our agenda. Thank you. We are adjourned.